Hey, what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thanks so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. In today's video, we're going to do a video on budget commander cards that are under $1. And this is part 8, which is pretty wild to think that I've done. The other parts, if you haven't seen those, I'll list them in the down bar below. You can check them out. And I'd really like to know what budget cards you really like, so let's hop into it. The first card I want to talk about is Revoke Existence, and I feel like I have definitely forgot that this card exists, if I'm going to be completely honest, but I think this card is actually quite good. One thing that I really love is a lot of different things about this card. First off, I love that it's both artifact and enchantment, because sometimes these kinds of cards can like only target one or the other, and I always like having this as like a where I can do both, you know, and depending on the situation that I need it to be. The downside of this, I guess, is that it's sorcery speed, but to be honest, I think for the fact that it's exiling and it's artifact or enchantment, I think makes this card very worthwhile, and it's also a budget-friendly card. Like, what's not to like about Revoke Existence? It's a great card. And I feel like when I think about removal, I feel like some people forget about artifact and enchantment removal. It's a lot of times just creature-based removal, and artifact and enchantment removal is still really important, so this card's great. The next card that I want to talk about is Whirlwind Denial. I feel like a lot of the counter spells that get used in Commander that are like the very, very common ones can be like a little bit more expensive, something like Force of Will, things like that, but I definitely think you can get away with running like budget counter spells. And I think also too to note is like it just totally depends on your play group. Like if you're in a really, really competitive space, you might need to spend just extra money, like making sure your deck is sufficient. But I think if you're playing like more casual games of Commander, I think cards like this are fine. There's a lot of really good budget counter spells. They just lean in the 3 mana realm, and I think that's just like something to know. Or the 2 mana ones are a little different. I can do a whole video on like counter spells in Commander if you want me to. Just let me know in a comment below, because there's like a lot of stuff to say, I feel like, there. But anyways, so it says for each spell and ability your opponent controls counter unless they pay 4. Well, this can definitely be really, really good, I feel like, at many points of the game, because if you stop someone really early on, or if you have a combo player in your play group, this is a really good spell to stop them from doing it. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say. It's a good card. Cool. Really excited to chat about the Talisman cards. And I remember when these first came out, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, these are like super great. And I think I definitely, I have these cards actually. I just have other ones that I myself personally run. However, if you're on a budget, I think these cards are definitely very fair. They do a little bit of damage to you if you are using them for their colors, but you know, I feel like your life total is like 1 million in Commander. Like, does it really matter? And then if you don't use those, you can just use this, and it's basically just a colorless source, which is good. Doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, which is really strong, and it's 2 colored. So if you're looking for cards that help get you your colors, which is truthfully one of the most important things, cards like these will definitely help you get you there, and they are under $1, which is awesome. So this card's great. Oh my gosh. I remember when Always Watching came out, and people were like, this card is so good. It's basically Intangible Virtue, which is one of my personal favorite cards, but it's obviously like not Intangible Virtue, but it's basically Intangible Virtue. It's non-creature tokens. It's also 1 more mana than Intangible Virtue, but your stuff gets +1/+1 and has Vigilance. So obviously this is only working in the right sort of deck, right? You're not running this if you have like tokens or anything, because it just literally doesn't make sense with that sort of strategy. But if you are playing just a bunch of like little dudes or whatever, like I think this is a really solid inclusion in the deck. Not only does it give them a buff, but it gives them Vigilance. This card's really great. I like have them. I want to put it in something. I just don't know what to put it in. I feel like I run tokens like so much more, which is really interesting, but card is good. Cool. I'm actually like excited that this card is under $1 because it's just a really solid removal spell in Commander, and yeah, and that is Terminate. This is like, I just feel like a very quintessential, like, staple removal card, I would say. It's 2 mana, it's instant speed, which is great. You destroy any creature that you'd like, and it can't regenerate, which may or may not be relevant, but it's just, like, it's a good removal spell. Like, I think if you're playing black and red, I think this is just, like, an auto include. I love it. I actually think now that I'm talking about this, I want to pick up the like extended border because it's only like $5 foil, which is realistically not that bad. So gotta put that on my list to pick that up at some point because I have this card in Mugus and it's very good. Okay, so Deafening Silence. I feel like I am an inner Death in Texas player, or as I like to call it, D&T. I'm not coining that term. I don't know why I said as I like to call it. Like, other people say that too. Like, I'm not the only person who says D&T, but it just sounds really cool, you know? D&T. I like it. Anyways, I feel like I'm definitely like a Death in Texas player, and I kind of feel like I should just build a Death in Texas deck. But I think my problem is I don't want to make it mono white because I already have a mono white deck, and even though this would be totally different from that, I don't know. Maybe, let me know. What color should I splash if I do that? Because I just feel like there's so many good Death in Texas cards. Like, I honestly think like a lot of the white Death in Texas cards are just really good. And I think one thing I like just want to say is this does say each player, so this does impact you, and it is only non-creature, but like, to be honest with you, for 1 mana, this is like a really good card. I feel like I don't run cards like this, and like, I'm not going to put this in like every white commander deck or something like that, but I do think this is quite a good card. And I especially think it's good if you're putting this in, yes, it has a shell like a Death in Texas deck, but it's also really good too if you put this in like a you're playing like a more creature based deck, so this effect doesn't really impact you very much, but it does impact your opponents. And I think in the right commander group, I think this card can be very detrimental, and it's only 1 mana. Like, card is really strong. I really like it a lot. Okay, this card's like 40 cents over $1. Like, don't get upset. But I just think this card is really solid. And that is Killing Wave. And I feel like one hurdle that I think some commander players feel with black is like a lot of the like Damnation, for example, is pretty pricey, which I totally understand. However, I think, and I feel like too, it's like tricky because like, I'm not saying like this over Damnation, like, you know, you can obviously run both, you could do one, you could not do the other, whatever, but I think if you are in a budget, also, regardless, I think Killing Wave is a really strong card. Each creature, so this does impact you, they sack it or they pay X life. So one thing I really like about this card is, well, I like a lot of things, but one aspect I really like about this is if you're playing this in the right commander deck, you can just totally like sack your creatures and then get like some sort of triggers after this. Like, as I'm actually talking about this card, it's really funny. I own this card in Mugus, which is like a sacrifice themed deck, but kind of as I'm talking about this, maybe I should put this in Tesa, because if my stuff dies, I don't care if my stuff dies, because it just makes me tokens and does things when death triggers, so you can definitely synergize this really well with that type of strategy. And but even if you're not doing that type of strategy, even if it does impact you, obviously you'd be playing this and it might hurt you, but it's going to hurt your opponents more and stop them, which is obviously more important. So I do think Killing Wave is a very strong card, and it's a good card. Okay, let's chat about Underworld Connections. I like this card. I think that drawing cards is just so important, and I feel like you just can't ignore that. You just can't ignore that it's going to be one of the best things, it's if not the best thing that you can do in a Commander game, or in any Magic game. Making sure you have enough things to do, making sure you have options in your hand, and Underworld Connections definitely helps you get there. I understand that there's a lot of people who say that they don't like a lot of those like instant speed or sorcery speed cards that draw some cards. They want something that like lasts a little bit longer, and this is a really good example of a card that's gonna stay on the field because it's an enchantment. So if you're one of those people who's like, I don't really want to run like an instant like whatever type card that's gonna like draw me 2 cards then go to the graveyard, I want something that's gonna last a little bit longer, Underworld Connections definitely does that. You do have to pay life, but again, I feel like these types of things in Commander just don't really matter a whole lot, and you do draw a card, so it is a tap sort of ability. However, I think it's fine. I think this card is really good. I like it a lot. Okay, the next card, another Death in Texas card, I did not do this on purpose, is Ashes of the Abhorrent. I don't know why Abhorrent is such like a strange word. Players can't cast spells from their graveyards or activate abilities of cards in graveyards, and whenever a creature dies, you gain 1 life. So this is like a very like classic like Death and Taxes card. I think one thing that might stop some people from playing Death and Taxes types of cards, like not necessarily just like this, but in general, is when you play a card like this, is this card progressing your board, or is it stopping someone else from doing things? And I think that there needs to be a balance of things, because you can't just play a deck that just stops your opponents from doing anything, but then you don't have a way to win. Like, you can't do that. Like, you gotta have some sort of way to win. And so one thing that I think is cool is in a card like this, where it does give you something out of it, which is that you do gain a little bit of life. So if you're someone who's been like a little bit hesitant, like, I'm not sure if I want to play like this Death and Taxes card, like it doesn't help me in the sense that it doesn't progress my board, it just stops someone else. This is a card that, you know, you gain a little bit of life from, which is cool. And a lot of people like to do graveyard shenanigans in Commander. It's like a very common thing. So I feel like even if you're playing this too in a game of Commander and people aren't playing like a huge graveyard strategy, I feel like most people run like a little bit of graveyard synergy. Like I run like a couple of cards in my decks, even if it's not like the theme of the deck, like graveyard recursion. Also, too, things are gonna die. It's Commander, it happens all the time, so you're definitely gonna be gaining some life out of it. And it's only 2 mana, which is a plus. And the last card is Diabolic Tutor. Now, I feel like this card needs a little bit of a disclaimer, because in my series that's kind of opposite this, I talk about EDH cards that are worth the money, and I've talked about a lot of tutors in those videos, because I think if you're going to invest in Commander cards, I think tutors and your mana base are some of the most important things that you can invest in. However, I understand that some of those cards are very expensive and not everyone has that kind of money. This card, and again, I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to compare this card to this card, because they're obviously different, but again, I think in the Commander pod, where if you can get away with playing a 4 mana tutor over like a 2 mana tutor, absolutely, 100% go for it. Like, you can definitely play this card and get away with it. Like, if you're playing this really competitive space, you know, a card like this, like, might just really not work. But if you're playing in the right play group, I think you can absolutely get away with Diabolic Tutor, and paying a little bit of extra mana for that. And also, too, if your curve is really low, you might play this in something else, too, in the same turn. But, yeah, I think tutoring is just truthfully one of the best things to do in the game, making sure you're getting what you need, especially in Commander when your deck is so stacked, there's so much going on there. I think it's really important to make sure that you can get the answers that you need to, whether it's a board wipe or a singular removal spell because the enchantment is the most terrible thing on the board, or anything that you really need, or your winning combo piece or anything like that, that helps get you there. So yeah, guys, that is everything for this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the other videos in this series. Can't believe we've already done part 8. We're going on part 9. I already have parts 9 and 10 planned, which is a little wild. There's so many cool things. Like, that's the really awesome thing about Commander, is that it's such an open, it's anyone's game, right? There's so much going on, which I think is just so exciting. So I would really love to know what budget cards you guys like, and they might be featured in another part. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you in my next one.